Her husband thought he'd won the divorce. Then her family walked into court. The courtroom smelled of old wood and broken promises. Elena Martinez sat alone at the defendant's table, her fingers trembling as they clutched a worn tissue. Her clothing was simple, a navy blazer from Target that had seen better days, paired with black slacks that had been hemmed by hand. No jewelry adorned her fingers. Not even the indent from where her wedding ring had lived for 12 years remained visible. Her lawyer, a nervous young man named Timothy Chun who'd graduated from law school just 3 years ago, shuffled papers with sweating palms and avoided eye contact with anyone on the other side of the room. Across the aisle, Marcus Sterling III lounged in his chair like a king on a throne. He wore a Brioni suit, $6,000 worth of Italian wool that hugged his athletic frame perfectly. His Patek Philippe watch caught the fluorescent lights as he gestured dismissively to his legal team. 3 sharks from Morrison & Black, the most expensive law firm in the city. His lead attorney, Richard Morrison himself, cost $1,500 per hour. Marcus's smile was wide, white, and cruel as he whispered something to his assistant, a woman 15 years younger than Elena, with platinum blonde hair and a dress that cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe. Her name was Amber. She'd been sleeping with Marcus for 2 years. Elena knew. She'd always known. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Patricia Westwood presiding. Judge Westwood entered with the weight of 30 years on the bench evident in every measured step. She was a woman in her late 60s, her gray hair pulled back severely, her expression carefully neutral as she surveyed the courtroom. She'd seen 1,000 divorce cases. This one probably looked like all the others. She had no idea what was coming. "Be seated," Judge Westwood said, her voice carrying authority. "We're here for the final hearing in the matter of Sterling versus Sterling. Case number 2024, DR 8847. Mr. Morrison, I believe you're prepared to present your client's final arguments." "Indeed, Your Honor." Richard Morrison stood, his silver hair gleaming, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "This is, thankfully, a straightforward matter. My client, Mr. Marcus Sterling, has been more than generous in his settlement offer to Mrs. Sterling, despite her numerous failings as a spouse." Elena flinched. Timothy started to rise, but she touched his arm gently, shaking her head. "Not yet." Marcus's smile widened. He'd seen that flinch. It fed something dark in him. "Mr. Sterling has offered Mrs. Sterling a lump sum of $50,000, Morrison continued, along with temporary housing assistance for 3 months. In exchange, Mrs. Sterling will relinquish all claims to the marital home valued at $2.3 million. Mr. Sterling's business assets totaling approximately $8.7 million, his retirement accounts, his investment portfolio, and any future earnings from his executive position at Sterling Dynamics. That's everything." Timothy whispered urgently to Elena. "We can't let them." "It's fine," Elena whispered back. Her voice was soft, almost resigned. Morrison wasn't finished. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence that during the marriage, Mrs. Sterling contributed virtually nothing to the household income. She hasn't worked outside the home in 12 years, has no marketable skills, and, according to my client, spent her days in idle pursuits." He said it with such disdain, such contempt. Marcus leaned back, his hand finding Amber's knee under the table. She giggled softly. Judge Westwood's eyes flickered with something. Irritation, perhaps, but she maintained her composure. "Mr. Chun, does your client wish to respond?" Timothy stood shakily. At 28, he looked like a boy playing dress-up in his father's clothes. His suit was from Men's Warehouse, his briefcase was falling apart at the seams, and his voice cracked when he spoke. "Your Honor, my client. Mrs. Sterling devoted 12 years to supporting her husband's career. She managed their home. She did the bare minimum expected of any spouse." Morrison cut in smoothly. "Your Honor, if I may, Mrs. Sterling has no college degree. She married Mr. Sterling when she was just 22, fresh out of community college with an associate's degree in liberal arts. My client, in his generosity, supported her for over a decade while she provided nothing of value in return." Elena's hands tightened on the tissue, but her face remained passive, almost blank. Furthermore, Morrison continued, warming to his theme, "Mrs. Sterling has no family to speak of, no support system, no prospects. My client is actually doing her a favor by offering her anything at all. $50,000 is more than sufficient to help her establish a modest life somewhere, appropriate to her station. No family to speak of. The words hung in the air. Marcus had been careful about that. For 12 years, he'd systematically isolated Elena from everyone she'd known before their marriage. It had started small. Comments about how her family was common, how they didn't understand their lifestyle. Then came the move to Connecticut, 2,000 miles from her childhood home. The phone calls that went unanswered. The holidays spent alone. The gradual, crushing loneliness that he'd encouraged, nurtured, and used to control her completely. She'd let him. For 12 years, she'd played the role of the simple, grateful wife who'd married above her station. But that had always been the role. Just the role. Mr. Chun, Judge Westwood prompted. Your response. Timothy looked at Elena desperately. She'd told him not to fight too hard today. She'd told him to trust her. But looking at her now, small, quiet, defeated, he couldn't understand why. Your Honor, he began weakly. Mrs. Sterling simply asked for a fair division of marital assets. She's entitled to nothing, Morrison said flatly. And I have evidence to support that claim. He produced a thick folder. I have testimony from Mr. Sterling detailing Mrs. Sterling's emotional instability, her inability to manage household finances, her complete dependence on my client for every aspect of her life. I have documentation showing that every asset in question was acquired through Mr. Sterling's efforts alone. And I have a prenuptial agreement, signed by Mrs. Sterling, that clearly states she waives all rights to my client's property in the event of divorce. Elena's lawyer went white. Your Honor, I've never seen this prenuptial agreement. It was never disclosed during discovery. Morrison smiled like a shark scenting blood. Because Mrs. Sterling's legal representation has been inadequate at best. I'm not surprised things slipped through the cracks. Here's a certified copy. He handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Judge Westwood examined it, her expression darkening. Mr. Chun, did you review all marital documents with your client? Your Honor, Mrs. Sterling told me there was no prenuptial agreement. Timothy looked at Elena, betrayed and confused. Elena stared at the prenup in the judge's hands. Her face showed nothing. Your Honor, Morrison said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. It seems Mrs. Sterling may have some difficulty with the truth, or perhaps simply with remembering inconvenient facts. Marcus laughed, actually laughed out loud in the courtroom. Judge Westwood's gavel came down sharply. Mr. Sterling, control yourself. But Marcus couldn't stop grinning. This was better than he'd imagined. Elena looked so small, so broken, so defeated. I'm sorry, Your Honor, he said, not sounding sorry at all. It's just, this has been difficult. 12 years of my life wasted on someone who contributed nothing. Someone who can't even remember signing a legal document. He shook his head sadly, theatrically. I just want this over. I want to move on with my life. His hand squeezed Amber's. I want to be happy again. Amber leaned into him, and several people in the gallery, Marcus's friends, his colleagues, murmured sympathetically. Elena kept her eyes down. Her shoulders slumped forward. She looked like she was folding in on herself. Timothy Chin wanted to throw up. Judge Westwood examined the prenuptial agreement for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable. Finally, she looked up. This document appears to be properly executed, she said slowly. However, thank you, Your Honor, Morrison interjected smoothly. Then I move that we proceed to finalizing the settlement as proposed. My client has been more than patient. Mrs. Sterling has no grounds to contest. I wasn't finished, Mr. Morrison. Judge Westwood's voice was ice. Morrison had the grace to look slightly chastened. My apologies, Your Honor. However, the judge continued, I want to give Mr. Chun and his client time to review this document and prepare a response. We'll take a 30-minute recess. Your Honor, Morrison objected. That's hardly necessary. 30 minutes, Mr. Morrison. We'll reconvene at 11:45 a.m. The gavel struck. Court is in recess. As Judge Westwood left the bench, Marcus turned to his legal team, his voice loud enough for Elena to hear. 30 more minutes of my life wasted. This is ridiculous. She has nothing. She has nothing. Why are we even pretending this is a real proceeding? His friends laughed. Amber kissed his cheek. Elena stood slowly, gathering her simple purse, following Timothy toward the hallway. She could feel their eyes on her back, feel their contempt, their pity, their satisfaction. She'd felt it for 12 years. But today it would end. The courthouse hallway was sterile and cold. Elena sat on a wooden bench, her hands folded in her lap, while Timothy paced frantically in front of her, the prenuptial agreement clutched in his shaking hands. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" he demanded, keeping his voice low but unable to hide his panic. "Elena, this changes everything. If this document is valid, and it looks valid, you're going to walk away with almost nothing. $50,000. That's it. After 12 years of marriage to a multimillionaire." "I know," Elena said quietly. "You know?" Timothy stopped pacing, staring at her. "You know? Then why did you hire me? Why go through with this at all?" "Elena, we don't have a case anymore. This prenup is airtight. You signed away everything." "Did I?" she asked, still not looking up. "Your signature is right there." He jabbed at the document. "Elena Martinez, witnessed and notarized in 2012, 3 days before your wedding. It's legal. It's binding. It's—" "Timothy," she interrupted gently, "trust me. Just a little longer." He wanted to argue, wanted to shake her, to make her understand the gravity of the situation. But something in her voice, a certainty, a calmness that didn't match her defeated posture, made him pause. Down the hall, Marcus held court. He'd gathered his entourage in front of the vending machines. His lawyer, his assistant-turned-mistress, 3 colleagues from Sterling Dynamics, and his brother, Derek. They laughed and joked as if they were at a cocktail party instead of a divorce proceeding. "I cannot believe she thought she'd get anything," Marcus said, loud enough that his voice echoed down the hallway. 12 years of playing house, and she thinks she's entitled to my money? Money I earned, money I built. "You were too generous offering her $50,000, Derek said, shaking his head. He was a shorter, stockier version of Marcus, with the same cruel smile. "Should have offered her 10. "I wanted to," Marcus admitted, grinning. "But Morrison said it would look bad to the judge. Appearances, you know. But 50 grand is nothing. That's what I spend on watches in a year." Amber laughed, a high-pitched sound that grated. "She should be thanking you, baby. You're giving her more than she deserves." "Exactly." Marcus pulled her close, kissing her aggressively in the hallway. When he pulled back, his eyes found Elena down the hall. Made sure she was watching. "I'm being extremely generous to someone who was, let's be honest, dead weight for over a decade." One of his colleagues, a man named Brad who'd spent many evenings at Marcus's house while Elena served drinks and disappeared into the kitchen, chuckled. "What's she going to do now? Get a job at Walmart?" They all laughed. "If they'll take her," Marcus said. "I mean, associate's degree in liberal arts? From community college? She's qualified to do basically nothing." Which is fitting, because that's exactly what she contributed to our marriage. Nothing. The words carried down the hallway. Elena heard every one. So did the other people waiting for their cases, the other divorces, the custody hearings, the restraining orders. They glanced at her with pity, with embarrassment, with secondhand shame. Timothy was shaking with rage. "Elena, I can file a complaint. He can't talk about you like that." It's fine," Elena said again. "Let him talk." "It's not fine. He's humiliating you in public. He's digging his own grave," Elena said softly. "Just wait." But Timothy couldn't understand. All he could see was his client being torn apart by a man who clearly had no shame, no decency, no empathy whatsoever. Marcus checked his Patek Philippe. 12:37 p.m. "How much longer do we have to wait?" "I have a 2 p.m. meeting with investors. This is cutting into my actual important work." 15 minutes, Morrison said, checking his own watch. "A Rolex, because anything less would be embarrassing. Then we go back in, the judge reviews the prenup, and we end this. You'll be a free man by lunch." "Free man," Marcus repeated, savoring the words. "Free to live my life without dead weight dragging me down. Free to be with someone who actually appreciates what I've accomplished." He pulled Amber closer. Someone young, beautiful, exciting. Amber preened under the attention. At 29, she'd been Marcus's assistant for 3 years, his mistress for 2. She knew about Elena. Everyone at Sterling Dynamics knew. It was an open secret that Marcus Sterling was cheating on his wife with the hot blonde from marketing. No one said anything because Marcus was the VP of operations, because Marcus had money and power and connections, because speaking up meant losing your job. "When are we going to Cabo?" Amber asked, playing with his tie. You promised we'd go once this was all over. Next week, Marcus assured her. 5-star resort, private villa, no expense spared. We'll celebrate my freedom properly. And your boat? Derek asked. You're still getting the yacht, right? 40-foot azimuth, Marcus confirmed, his eyes gleaming. Purchased last month. Delivery next week. The sterling victory. He paused for effect. Named it myself. They all laughed at the double meaning. Victory over Elena. Victory in court. Victory in life. Elena sat on her bench, listening to it all. Her face betrayed nothing, but inside, she was counting. Counting every boast, every cruel word, every witness to his arrogance. The bailiff appeared in the hallway. Court's resuming in 5 minutes. Marcus stubbed out his cigarette. He'd been smoking right outside the courthouse doors, despite the no smoking signs, and straightened his tie. Showtime. Let's end this circus. They filed back into the courtroom. Marcus's team moved with the confidence of winners. Timothy and Elena walked like mourners at a funeral. Judge Westwood returned to the bench precisely at 11:45 a.m. She looked tired, as if the last half hour had aged her. Mr. Chun, she said, have you had adequate time to review the prenuptial agreement with your client? Timothy stood, his voice hollow. Yes, Your Honor. We've reviewed it. And do you wish to contest its validity? This was it. The moment where Timothy had to admit defeat. Where Elena would lose everything. Where Marcus would win completely. Timothy opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Elena one more time, desperate for guidance. She nodded once, so slightly that only he could see it. Your Honor, Timothy said slowly, we do not contest the validity of the prenuptial agreement at this time. A collective exhale from Marcus's side of the courtroom. Victory. They'd won. However, Timothy continued, his voice gaining strength. We do request that the court examine certain irregularities that have come to our attention. Marcus's smile faltered. Just for a second. Irregularities? Mr. Chun, Judge Westwood said carefully, what irregularities? Timothy looked at Elena again. She was staring at the courtroom doors. Waiting. Your Honor, Boom. The double doors at the back of the courtroom slammed open. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Every head turned. Conversations died. Even the court reporter's fingers froze over her keyboard. 3 men entered the courtroom. The first was in his early 60s, with silver hair swept back from a strong face, wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost more than Marcus's car. His presence filled the room like a storm front. His eyes, dark and sharp and intelligent, swept the courtroom with the gaze of a man who owned everything he looked at. The second man was in his mid-30s, tall and broad-shouldered, with his father's eyes and a Brioni suit that made Marcus's look off the rack. He carried a leather briefcase that screamed million-dollar lawyer. The third man was younger, perhaps 30, with the same dark eyes as his father and brother, but with a more elegant, refined air. He wore Armani and moved like a dancer, graceful, precise, and dangerous. Behind them came 2 women in matching power suits, each carrying multiple file boxes. And behind them, 2 more men in dark suits who had security written all over them. The lead man, the silver-haired one, walked down the center aisle with the measured pace of someone who'd entered 1,000 courtrooms and won every single case. His handmade Italian shoes clicked on the hardwood floor. Click, click, click. Marcus's face had gone white. Who the hell? The man reached Elena's table. He stopped, looked down at her with an expression that mixed fury, love, and fierce protection in equal measure. Mihija, he said softly. I'm sorry we're late. Elena stood. The transformation was immediate and stunning. Her shoulders straightened. Her chin lifted. The defeated, broken woman disappeared, replaced by someone else entirely, someone who'd been there all along, just hidden under a carefully crafted disguise. Papa, she said, and her voice was different now. Stronger. Clear. You're right on time. She embraced him, and the silver-haired man held her tightly, his eyes never leaving Marcus's pale face. Your Honor, Elena said, turning to the judge, her voice carrying through the stunned silence. I apologize for the dramatic interruption. Please allow me to introduce my family. This is my father, Eduardo Martinez. These are my brothers, Miguel and Carlos. And these are members of our legal team from Martinez and Associates. Judge Westwood's eyes widened. Eduardo Martinez? The Eduardo Martinez. The same, Your Honor. Eduardo's voice was deep, warm, and carried the slight accent of someone who'd learned English as his second language perfectly. I apologize for the late arrival. Our flight from Mexico City was delayed. Marcus felt the ground tilting under him. Eduardo Martinez. He knew that name. Everyone who read business news knew that name. Martinez Industries. Real estate development across 3 continents. Hotels, resorts, commercial properties. Net worth estimated at $3.7 billion. $3.7 billion. Mr. Morrison, Eduardo said, turning to Marcus's lawyer with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I believe you stated in your opening remarks that my daughter has no family to speak of. I assure you, that is incorrect. Morrison had gone pale. We were informed. Mr. Sterling said. Mr. Sterling. Eduardo's gaze shifted to Marcus, has said many things over the years. Most of them lies. Miguel Martinez stepped forward, placing his briefcase on Elena's table. Your Honor, Miguel Martinez, attorney at law. I'm here to represent my sister's interests in this proceeding. I apologize that we weren't present from the beginning, but we had to travel from Mexico City once Elena informed us that her husband was attempting to defraud her in divorce court. Defraud? Marcus finally found his voice. It came out strangled. What the hell are you talking about? I'm not defrauding anyone. We have a prenup. She signed it. Did she? Carlos Martinez, the younger brother, pulled out a tablet. Because we have some interesting findings about that prenuptial agreement. Timothy was staring at Elena with his mouth open. You're a Martinez? As in Martinez Industries Martinez. Yes, Elena said simply. But you told me you had no family. No money. No support. I told you, Elena corrected gently, that I'd been estranged from my family for 12 years. Which was true. I also told you that this case was more complicated than it appeared. Which was also true. You let me think. I let Marcus think, Elena interrupted, her voice hardening. Exactly what he wanted to think. That I was nobody. That I came from nothing. That I had nothing. Because that's what he needed to believe to show his true colors. Eduardo placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Your Honor, if I may explain. 12 years ago, my daughter met Marcus Sterling. She was young, just 22, and she was rebellious. She didn't want to be the Martinez heiress. She wanted to live a normal life, to be loved for herself, not for her family's money. So I didn't tell him, Elena said, looking directly at Marcus for the first time since her family arrived. I introduced myself as Elena Maria, not Elena Maria Martinez. I told him I was from a small town in California, that I'd gone to community college, that I had no money. And he fell in love with that version of me. Or so I thought. Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You lied to me? I omitted, Elena corrected. Much like you omitted mentioning Amber. And Jessica before her. And Rachel before her. Her voice was ice. Shall I continue? I have receipts, Marcus. I have 12 years of receipts. Amber, sitting next to Marcus, had gone sheet white. Jessica and Rachel? There were others? Miguel opened his briefcase. Your Honor, we'd like to submit several pieces of evidence. First, regarding the prenuptial agreement that Mr. Morrison introduced. He handed a document to the bailiff. This is a forensic analysis of that prenup, conducted by 3 separate handwriting experts. The signature attributed to Elena Maria Sterling, formerly Elena Maria Martinez, is a forgery. The courtroom exploded. Marcus shot to his feet. That's impossible. She signed it. I watched her sign it. You watched someone sign it, Carlos corrected. But it wasn't Elena. He pulled up an image on his tablet, projecting it onto the courtroom screen. This is the prenup signature, enlarged. Note the specific flourish on the M in Martinez. Another image appeared. This is Elena's actual signature, from her passport, her driver's license, and her trust fund documents. Note that the M is completely different. The loops are wrong. The pressure is wrong. Even the ink is wrong. The prenup was signed with a ballpoint pen, but Elena exclusively uses a fountain pen, a gift from our father for her quinceañera. Judge Westwood leaned forward, examining the images. Her face was granite. Furthermore, Miguel continued, we have testimony from Elena's whereabouts on the date this prenup was allegedly signed. August 15, 2012. According to the document, it was signed in Connecticut. However, on that date, Elena was actually in Mexico City, attending her grandmother's funeral. We have plane tickets, hotel records, and testimony from 24 family members who can confirm her presence. Marcus grabbed Morrison's arm. This is insane. You vetted this document. You told me it was solid. Morrison was frantically flipping through his files. The notary seal looked legitimate. The notary is fake, Carlos said pleasantly. The name on the seal, Jessica Remington, is actually the name of Marcus's former girlfriend. The same Jessica I mentioned earlier. The one he paid $10,000 to notarize a fake prenup. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Morrison sputtered. These are serious allegations without proof. Miguel pulled out another folder. We have bank records showing the $10,000 payment from Marcus Sterling to Jessica Remington on August 20th, 2012. We have text messages between them discussing the fake prenup. And we have a signed affidavit from Ms. Remington herself, admitting to the fraud. He handed everything to the bailiff. Ms. Remington is outside, ready to testify. She's cooperating fully in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Marcus lunged toward the door. The two security men who'd entered with Elena's family moved to block him. Sit down, Mr. Sterling, Eduardo said quietly. You're not going anywhere. Judge Westwood's gavel came down. Order. Everyone sit down now. The room froze. Slowly, people returned to their seats. Marcus collapsed into his chair, his face gray, his hands shaking. Mr. Morrison, Judge Westwood said, her voice dangerous. Did you verify the authenticity of this prenuptial agreement before submitting it to this court? Your Honor, my client assured me. Your client assured you. Judge Westwood's eyes were fire. Mr. Morrison, you've been practicing law for 30 years. You know that verifying documents is your responsibility, not your client's. Morrison had no response. Judge Westwood turned to Marcus. Mr. Sterling, did you forge a prenuptial agreement? I want my lawyer, Marcus whispered. You have a lawyer, the judge snapped. Answer the question. I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. The courtroom erupted again. Timothy looked like Christmas had come early. Eduardo Martinez's smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. Very well, Judge Westwood said. But we're not done. Miguel Martinez, you said you had multiple pieces of evidence. Yes, Your Honor. The fake prenup is just the beginning. Miguel pulled out another folder. We also have evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and marital asset hiding by Mr. Sterling. Marcus's head snapped up. What? Miguel Martinez moved like a prosecutor closing in for the kill. Your Honor, over the past 12 years, Marcus Sterling has systematically stolen from my sister. He controlled all bank accounts. He controlled all assets. He monitored every penny she spent. But what he didn't know was that Elena was monitoring him. Elena stood, and now there was no trace of the broken woman who'd sat at this table an hour ago. She was a Martinez, and the Martinez family didn't raise victims. For 5 years, Elena said clearly, I've been documenting everything. Every affair. Every lie. Every theft. Because you see, Marcus, I did sign something on our wedding day. Not a prenup, but a document my father insisted I carry with me always. A postnuptial agreement, properly filed and notarized, stating that all assets I brought into the marriage and all assets acquired during the marriage through my family's investments remain my separate property. She pulled out a folder. When we married, Marcus, I was worth approximately $200 million. Trust funds, investments, property holdings. I kept it secret because I wanted to see if you loved me for me. You tested me? Marcus's voice was strangled. I gave you a choice, Elena corrected. Love me for who I am, or show me who you really are. You chose option 2. She opened the folder. Here are the documents. In our first year of marriage, using my family connections you didn't know I had, I helped you secure contracts worth $3.2 million. I introduced you to investors, using false names, who funded your business expansion. That $8.7 million business you're so proud of? It was built on MY family's money and MY connections. Carlos stepped forward with his tablet. We have documented every investment, every introduction, every business deal that Elena facilitated while Marcus believed she was just his dutiful little wife. The projected screen lit up with a complex web of business transactions. Sterling Dynamics' biggest contract, the Henderson project worth $4.1 million, came through the Martinez Hotel Group. Elena arranged it. The Riverside development deal? Martinez Industries. The Skyline Tower renovation? Martinez Construction Group. Marcus was shaking his head. No, that's not. I earned those contracts. You earn nothing, Eduardo said, his voice cutting. My daughter, in her misguided attempt to support her husband, used her family name, secretly, to open doors for you. Every major success you've had in the past decade traces back to Martinez Industries or our business partners. We have paper trails for everything. Miguel picked up a different folder. But let's talk about what Marcus Sterling earned on his own. Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence of embezzlement from Sterling Dynamics. Richard Morrison shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is beyond the scope of. Sit down, Mr. Morrison, Judge Westwood ordered. I want to hear this. Miguel continued. Over the past 4 years, Marcus Sterling has been siphoning money from his own company. False expense reports, fake vendor accounts, ghost employees on the payroll. He handed over a thick stack of documents. The total theft amounts to $1.2 million. That's insane, Marcus shouted. I'm the VP. I don't need to steal from my own company. From the company your wife's family invested in, Carlos corrected. Martinez Industries owns 27% of Sterling Dynamics through a subsidiary. You've been stealing from us. The blood drained from Marcus's face. Oh, it gets better, Elena said, and her smile was terrifying. Tell them about the offshore accounts, Carlos. Carlos pulled up more documents. Marcus has been hiding money in offshore accounts for 3 years. Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore. Total deposits of $2.3 million. Money that should have been declared as marital assets. You've been investigating me? Marcus's voice was shrill now. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting myself, Elena said coldly, and documenting your crimes. Every time you told me I was too stupid to understand finances, I was photographing your bank statements. Every time you said I was too emotional to handle business, I was recording your conversations. Every time you treated me like I was nothing, I was building a case against you. She nodded to Miguel, who pulled out a small recording device. Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to play a recording from 6 months ago. Marcus Sterling speaking with his brother, Derek, at their home. Judge Westwood nodded grimly. Proceed. Miguel pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the courtroom, crystal clear. She'll get nothing. I've got the prenup, I've got the offshore account set up, and I've got Morrison on retainer. Even if she tries to fight, she'll be broke before she can hire a real lawyer. I'll take everything. The house, the money, the business. She'll end up in some shitty apartment, working minimum wage, and I'll be on my yacht with Amber. Derek's voice, laughing. You're a cold bastard, Marcus. Marcus's voice, pleased. I learned from the best. Remember what Dad always said? If you're going to fuck someone over, make sure you fuck them completely. Elena never saw me coming. She actually thinks I loved her. Can you believe that? She thinks I married her because she was special. She was convenient. Young, pretty enough, and too stupid to ask questions. The recording clicked off. Silence. Absolute, crushing silence. Amber was crying quietly. Marcus's colleagues were staring at him with disgust. Derek, sitting in the gallery, had his head in his hands. You recorded me in my own home? Marcus whispered. Connecticut is a one-party consent state, Miguel said. Elena was present for this conversation. The recording is perfectly legal. Elena leaned forward. I have 47 hours of recordings, Marcus. 47 hours of you discussing how to defraud me, how to hide assets, how to destroy me in divorce court. Every strategy session with your lawyer. Every conversation with Derek about offshore accounts. Every moment when you thought I was too stupid to be a threat. She paused, letting it sink in. I have video recordings too. 16 cameras hidden throughout the house. I have footage of you with Amber. With Jessica. With Rachel. With 3 other women whose names I don't even know. I have footage of you forging my signature on documents. I have footage of you shredding financial statements you didn't want me to see. Marcus was having trouble breathing. His expensive suit suddenly looked like it was strangling him. Your Honor, Miguel said. We also have testimony from several witnesses. Jessica Remington, Marcus's ex-girlfriend, who will testify that she helped him forge the prenup and that Marcus paid her $10,000 for her silence, until we offered her immunity. Rachel Dawson, another ex-girlfriend, who will testify that Marcus asked her to lie about Elena's mental state to establish grounds for an unequal divorce settlement. And, he paused dramatically, Amber Collins, Marcus's current girlfriend and employee, who has agreed to testify against him in exchange for protection from prosecution as an accomplice. Every eye turned to Amber. She was sobbing, mascara running down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. He told me. He said you didn't care. He said you were crazy. He said." "He lied," Elena said flatly. "He lied to you like he lied to me. Like he lies to everyone." Amber nodded miserably. He's been using company funds. For our trips. For my apartment. For jewelry. He said it was fine. That it was all his money anyway. But then these lawyers came and they showed me. They showed me that he's been committing fraud and that I could go to prison too if I didn't cooperate." Marcus turned to her, his face a mask of betrayal and rage. "You bitch. You fucking." "Mr. Sterling." Judge Westwood's gavel cracked like thunder. "One more outburst, and I'll hold you in contempt." Eduardo Martinez stepped forward, placing himself between Marcus and his daughter. "Your Honor, there's one more thing. The Sterling Dynamics Board of Directors met this morning. Given the evidence of embezzlement and fraud, they voted to terminate Marcus Sterling's employment, effective immediately. His benefits are suspended. His company's stock is frozen pending criminal investigation, and they're filing a civil suit to recover the stolen funds." Marcus made a sound like a wounded animal. No, that's my company. I built that company." "You built it with my family's money," Elena said. "And now you're going to lose it." Morrison was frantically whispering to his junior associates. One of them was shaking his head. Another looked like he might throw up. Furthermore, Miguel continued relentlessly. "The IRS has been notified of Marcus Sterling's offshore accounts. They've frozen his assets pending an investigation into tax evasion. The estimated tax liability, including penalties, is approximately $1.1 million. Marcus slumped in his chair. His face was gray. His hands trembled. "Your Honor," Miguel said, "my sister is not asking for this divorce settlement out of greed. She's asking for justice. She's asking for what is rightfully hers. And she's asking that Marcus Sterling face the full consequences of his fraud, his theft, and his abuse." Abuse. Morrison grabbed onto that word like a lifeline. "Your Honor, there's been no evidence of physical abuse. Financial abuse," Carlos cut in. "Emotional abuse. Coercive control. Isolating Elena from her family for 12 years. Monitoring her every movement. Controlling every dollar she spent. Making her believe she was worthless and powerless." He pulled out another folder. "We have a forensic psychologist's report documenting the psychological damage caused by 12 years of systematic manipulation and control. It's textbook financial and emotional abuse." Elena's voice was quiet but clear. "He made me believe I was nothing, that I had nothing, that I was lucky he'd married me at all. For 12 years, I played the role of the grateful, simple wife because I wanted to believe that somewhere inside him was the man I'd fallen in love with." She looked at Marcus, and her eyes were dry. No tears, no weakness, just cold, hard truth. "But that man never existed. You saw a young woman with no apparent connections, and you saw someone you could control, someone you could use, someone you could discard when you got bored. You never loved me, Marcus. You loved what I represented, easy, controllable, disposable." "Elena," Marcus's voice broke. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't you dare. I gave you 12 years. I gave you chances. I hoped you'd change. I hoped you'd see me as a person, not a possession. But instead, you got worse. More cruel. More controlling. More convinced of your own superiority." She stood taller, and everyone in the courtroom could see it now. The power, the strength, the brilliance that she'd hidden for more than a decade. "So I documented everything. I built a case. I waited for you to show your true colors one final time. And you did. You tried to destroy me completely. To take everything and leave me with nothing." Her smile was ice. "Instead, you destroyed yourself." Judge Patricia Westwood had presided over divorce cases for 30 years. She'd seen cheaters and liars, abusers and frauds. She'd seen people at their worst, their most selfish, their most cruel. But she'd never seen anything quite like this. "Mr. Morrison," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 3 decades of jurisprudence, "I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I expect a direct answer. Did you know about the fake prenuptial agreement?" Richard Morrison, who charged $1,500 per hour and had a reputation as one of the best divorce attorneys on the East Coast, looked at his client, looked at the Martinez family's mountain of evidence, looked at his career hanging in the balance. Your Honor, I relied on my client's representations. If there was fraud, I was not aware of it. That's not an answer, Mr. Morrison. Morrison swallowed hard. I did not knowingly submit a fraudulent document to this court. But you didn't verify it either. No, Your Honor, I did not. Judge Westwood's expression could have frozen lava. Mr. Morrison, I'm filing a formal complaint with the State Bar. Your conduct in this case has been, at best, negligent and, at worst, complicit in fraud upon this court. You're dismissed. Mr. Sterling, you'll need to find new representation. Morrison grabbed his briefcase. Your Honor, if I could just... You're dismissed, Mr. Morrison. Leave my courtroom. The man who'd swaggered in that morning walked out with his head down and his career in ruins. His junior associates followed, practically running. Marcus was alone now. Just him and an empty chair where his lawyer had been. Mr. Sterling, Judge Westwood continued, stand up. Marcus stood on shaking legs. You came into my courtroom today expecting to commit fraud. You presented fake documents. You lied under oath. Yes, your earlier testimony is part of the record. You attempted to steal millions of dollars from your wife through deception. And you wasted this court's time and resources. She paused, letting each word land like a hammer blow. The prenuptial agreement is invalidated. I'm granting Mrs. Sterling's petition for divorce with cause, based on adultery, fraud, and financial abuse. Marcus swayed. Elena remained still. Regarding asset division, the marital home, valued at $2.3 million, is awarded to Mrs. Sterling. Your business interests in Sterling Dynamics, or what's left of them after the board's termination in civil suits, are marital property and will be divided equitably, which means Mrs. Sterling is entitled to 50% of their value. Your Honor, please, Marcus croaked. I'm not finished. Your retirement accounts, investment portfolios, and all other marital assets are to be divided equally. However, Mrs. Sterling has presented evidence that much of your so-called separate property was actually acquired using funds and connections from the Martinez family. Therefore, I'm ordering a full forensic accounting of all your assets to determine what is truly marital property and what belongs to Mrs. Sterling's family. Judge Westwood consulted her notes. Furthermore, I'm awarding Mrs. Sterling alimony in the amount of $25,000 per month for 12 years, 1 year for each year of marriage during which you financially and emotionally abused her. I'm also ordering you to pay her attorney's fees, which I imagine will be substantial given the complexity of this case. Eduardo Martinez smiled. His attorneys charged $2,500 per hour. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. The evidence presented today suggests multiple felonies, fraud, forgery, embezzlement, tax evasion. That's beyond this court's jurisdiction, but I have a duty to report it. Marcus's legs gave out. He collapsed into his chair. Finally, I'm issuing a restraining order. Mr. Sterling, you are not to contact Mrs. Sterling directly or indirectly. You are not to go within 500 feet of her residence, her workplace, or any member of her family. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. The gavel came down. The sound was final, absolute, irrevocable. This court is adjourned. Judge Westwood stood and left the bench. The moment she was gone, chaos erupted. Marcus sat frozen, his world collapsing around him. The $2.3 million home, gone. His business, destroyed. His reputation, annihilated. His freedom, in jeopardy. Derek slipped out a side door, wanting nothing to do with his brother's downfall. Marcus's colleagues from Sterling Dynamics practically ran from the courtroom, already texting their lawyers to distance themselves from the situation. Amber stood, grabbing her purse. I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't be part of this. She looked at Elena. I'm sorry. For everything. He told me you didn't care. He told me. He lied. Elena repeated. To both of us. Amber nodded miserably and left, her designer heels clicking rapidly on the floor. Marcus was alone. Elena stood, her father's hand on her shoulder, her brothers flanking her. She looked down at the man who'd controlled her, manipulated her, abused her for 12 years. Marcus, she said quietly. He looked up, his eyes red, his face streaked with tears. You asked me earlier why I didn't fight harder. Why I seemed defeated. Why I let you think you'd won? She leaned down, her voice soft enough that only he could hear. Because I learned from the best. My father taught me that the most dangerous opponent is the one who lets you think you've already won. You were so busy celebrating your victory that you never saw your defeat coming. She straightened, adjusting her cheap Target blazer with a smile. You married me thinking I was nobody. You treated me like nothing. You assumed I was powerless. But Marcus, I was never the poor girl from nowhere. I was always Elena Maria Martinez. I was always powerful. I just needed you to forget that long enough to hang yourself with your own rope. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Marcus? That yacht you bought? The one you named the Sterling Victory? It was purchased with embezzled funds. The FBI seized it this morning. His mouth fell open. Elena smiled. Enjoy prison. The Mexico City skyline glittered in the sunset. Elena Martinez stood on the balcony of her penthouse apartment in Polanco, a glass of wine in her hand, watching the city she'd grown up in welcome her home. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her own choices, her own style, her own life. Behind her, the apartment was filled with the sounds of family. Her father's laugh boomed from the kitchen where he was attempting to cook dinner with her mother. Her brothers argued good-naturedly about football in the living room. Cousins, aunts, uncles, the family she'd been separated from for 12 years, surrounded her with love and noise and life. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Former executive Marcus Sterling sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for fraud and embezzlement. Additional 5 years for tax evasion. Ordered to pay $4.2 million in restitution. Elena didn't feel satisfaction. Didn't feel revenge. Just closure. She'd sold the Connecticut house for $2.4 million. The forensic accounting had revealed that Marcus's actual contribution to their marital assets was less than $300,000. The rest had all come from Martinez family connections and investments. She'd received full restitution plus damages. Sterling Dynamics had undergone massive restructuring. New management. New ethics policies. Elena had sold her inherited stake for $3.1 million and donated the entire amount to domestic violence charities. The money didn't matter. It had never mattered. What mattered was that she was free. Elena, her mother called. Dinner. She took one last look at the sunset, then went inside to join her family. Timothy Chun had gotten a job at Martinez and Associates, where he was learning from the best lawyers in Latin America. He sent her updates occasionally. He'd gained confidence, had won 3 major cases, and was dating a paralegal named Maria. Amber Collins had entered therapy and returned to school, determined to rebuild her life. She'd sent Elena a letter apologizing for her role in the affair. Elena had never responded, but she hoped Amber learned from her mistakes. Richard Morrison had been disbarred. His firm had collapsed. Last Elena heard, he was working as a consultant for a legal document service in Delaware. Jessica Remington had given testimony and avoided prison. She'd moved to Oregon and was reportedly managing a coffee shop. Derek Sterling had distanced himself from his brother completely. Marcus was alone in prison, with no visitors, no support, and no prospects for early release. Elena felt no joy in any of it, just tired relief that it was over. She'd spent 2 months in therapy, unpacking 12 years of manipulation and control. She'd cried. She'd raged. She'd grieved the woman she might have been if she'd never met Marcus Sterling. But she'd also rediscovered the woman she was. The daughter, the sister, the heir to a business empire who'd chosen love over money and learned the hard way that some people saw love as weakness. Never again. Her father found her in the kitchen, helping her mother prepare tamales. You look happy, Mija, he said softly. I am, Elena said, and meant it. I'm home. You were always home, Eduardo corrected gently. Home is family. Family never left you, even when we were far away. Elena hugged him, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne, the same cologne he'd worn her entire life. I'm sorry I stayed away so long, she whispered. You came back when you were ready, he said. That's all that matters. That evening, as the family gathered around the massive dining table, the same table where Elena had celebrated every birthday until she was 22, her brother Miguel raised his glass. To Elena, he said, who taught us that patience, planning, and perfect timing beats arrogance every time. To Elena, everyone echoed. She smiled, feeling the warmth of family, the comfort of home, the strength of knowing she'd never be powerless again. Marcus Sterling had thought he'd won the divorce. He'd been wrong about everything. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, let me know in the comments. What would you have done in Elena's position? Thanks for reading.